What's up, everybody? Tom Henderson from RESGEN here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast, where we hear stories and have conversations about life in Christ, integrating our faith into every area of our life, and talk about ways that we as men can give life to others, at home, at work, and in the community. On today's show, I am being joined by a hilarious new friend of mine who was the opening comedian at this year's date night comedy event. Jake Triplett is a comedian, a podcaster, and an entrepreneur based in Kansas City. He has performed all across the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, but from what I've heard, he prefers the tropical climate and the diverse culture in South Dakota. On this episode of the Giving Life Podcast, Jake and I visit about several different topics, including lessons he learned from working on staff at a Christian summer camp, how he got into comedy, and what led him to starting a pickleball company. We also talk about the difficulty in finding a work-life balance as an entrepreneur, going into business with your friends, and how meaningful it has been to read the journals that his grandma left behind when she passed away this past month. I have a feeling that this is going to be both a fruitful and funny episode, so let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jake Triplett. Jake Triplett, brother, welcome to the RESGEN Giving Life podcast booth.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. It's great in here. It's fun.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. It's not often that I have a professional podcaster, in the studio with me, and I have one. It's not often that I have a pickleball aficionado to the level that you are.
Oh, like
even
we pronounced
to
that.
the level of having your own pickleball company. But I have one here today.
Yeah.
And it's not often that I have a comedian in the studio with me, and you're one of those as well. So it's the trifecta.
It's an
all in
odd
one
mix.
person.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's hard to explain to Grandpa, what I do for a living, but it's I am providing for me and my wife. I promise all these things are real. But yeah, it's kind of odd.
So how do you, let's just say you are having a conversation with someone new, because this is going to be an introduction to many people as to who you are.
Yeah.
So how would you introduce yourself to a new person that doesn't know anything about Jake Triplett?
It's very much, you got to read the person. It's almost by generation, a nice young strapping lad like Thad here, producer Thad. I get a vibe from him. He would understand the word content creator. So maybe for him, 25 to 34, I might go content creator. I do a lot of social media content.
Yeah.
Now let's bump up, 30, 35 to 50. Now you're going, what would that be? I make a lot of videos online. I do a lot of videos, and they say you're like a social media manager, and I say, yeah, yeah, whatever. I'm not here to get it perfect. And then older than that, you just go marketing.
Yeah.
I just do marketing. I'm like, awesome. Yeah, thanks. It is awesome. No, honestly, if they're 50 and older, they probably love pickleball. And so that's where you hit them with that. I run this pickleball company, and, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into, I think, just a lot of different topics and a lot of I think, and I said the intro, it's going to be both fruitful and fun.
Cool.
Number one, because I'm a speaker, and so I like to use alliteration.
Yeah, you have
so
to.
I just think it makes sense. And it goes well with Friday as well. So,
Yeah.
So we're going to break down even just what the Friday hat is all about. I heard a great story this morning when you and I were having breakfast about just some people's comments regarding your hat. So we're going to probably get into that. But real quick, just give people just a quick snapshot of who you are, where you live, your family, marriage, that kind of stuff.
Great. My name is Jake Triplett. Grew up on a farm in Southwest Missouri. I now live in Kansas City. My wife and I have been married about a year and a half. And for the last 7-8 years have not really had much of a real job. It's been kind of different, I film for this guy. I edit for this guy. I do freelance wedding video. I bounced around different things, but for the most part, I have yet to have a corporate job. I went from college to youth ministry to then kind of freelancing to now where I'm at now, which is podcasting more in front of the camera type stuff.
Okay. And you said you've been married for 18 months.
Yep.
Roughly. And you met your wife
on a pickleball court.
Okay.
It can happen.
Yeah.
People are still meeting each other in real life.
What?
It's rare.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. As a sporty guy myself, kind of the dream. As I'm getting older, I go to a Baptist college And then I go work at this Christian summer camp for 6 summers, still not married. I think everyone was starting to wonder, like, what's going on? Everyone else is doing it. My dad's getting real worried. Like, I don't know which way he swings. I'm like, no, I just haven't found her. Anyway, and so then you start wondering, like, oh man, where would be the nice spots? It's like, maybe I should go to Target more.
Yeah.
That seems like a nice spot. Christian bookstore. I was really sad I was going to meet my wife at a Christian bookstore. And then, pickleball courts. Meadowbrook Park.
Okay.
In Prairie Village, Kansas.
Now, were you both waiting to play? Because I've been to many pickleball courts and, they're full. So you just wait and, you always see the sign that says, please limit your play to an hour.
Yeah.
And you're kind of keeping time on people. You're like, I think you're over.
They're asking you, how long you been? When did we start, guys? I don't know. I think we were on 30 minutes. Yeah, that's the worst.
So, or were you both waiting in line? Did you just watch her like do an overhead smash and you're like, that might be the one?
I'll tell you, you're honestly not that far off. As a male pickleball player, you're always looking like the hottest commodity on earth. It's like, uranium, gold, and like female pickleball players. Like it's the hardest thing to find. You're like, I want to play tournaments. I need to find like a solid girl as well. And I see this girl from across the court with a 2-handed backhand. You're a tennis player yourself, and it catches the eye a little bit. I'm like, what do we have here?
And my pickleball backhand is a 2-handed because I did play tennis.
And so someone like me who didn't grow up playing tennis, that's I don't care if it's you or Rachel. It's the sexiest thing I've ever laid eyes on. No, but it was like, you kind of get you're like, what's that over there? 2-handed backhand, don't think much of it. But then kind of just like, we both, her ball rolled over. We end up kind of the same side of the court. And then just like start chatting, whatever, hit it off a little bit. But as we're hitting it off, you're looking at any clues, right? I'm a 31-year-old single guy. I need this. And she had like a cross necklace on. Check. Yeah. Because no one's ever worn a cross necklace and not been a Christian. Yeah, you have to.
Ever. Yeah. In the history of cross necklaces.
Everyone. Oh, yeah. I was a kid. Michael Jordan had like a cross necklace, a cross earring. I was like, that guy's a solid Christian dude. Why else would he wear it? But she had that. And then I learned that she played like college volleyball. And I was like, I'm in. Like, this is great. I don't need to know anything else. But she was a college volleyball player. She's a bit on the taller side, and I'm a bit on the average side. And so I'm like definitely like sizing her up, like while we're standing there. I'm like, I think I'm taller than her. And later that night, I looked up her college volleyball roster. One, to figure out her last name, kind of dig into the Instagram, and 2, see her height. Yeah. Height said 5'9". So that's about as tall as we can go. Yeah. So I think we're in the clear. Any higher, and I'd be wearing heels. Yeah. But so she checked all the boxes, and it's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it started then. Was your first date like when you officially said, "Hey, we should go and hang out"? Rachel, like you and I think we should go and get some food. We should do some going. Did it involve pickleball?
I think our first like actual date, like you say the word, "I'd like to take you on a date." Yeah. That was like dinner, and then we went to like a trivia night. But I think our first time really hanging out, like we did kind of a double date little thing. Like, let's just kind of casually hang out. Pickleball court, right. For sure. I had to see that 2-hand backhand up close.
Right.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
So where'd you go for dinner?
A place that's already been shut down. So I guess I didn't choose a great spot. Yeah, they closed down like a month ago. Like, well, we can never go back there.
Well, what's funny is there's some similarities in our story.
Really?
Because I met my wife. She trained me how to be a server at TGI Fridays.
Oh.
In Sioux Falls, and where I learned that you always have to have at least 25 pieces of flair and all that way back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Well, TGI Fridays is no longer with us. In fact, they've just destroyed the building. It's no longer there.
Sioux Falls can't support Fridays?
No longer. It went, and so we take great pride in saying, listen, we lasted longer than TGI Fridays, right? And so that you can make that claim for the place that, is no longer with you.
Yeah.
It was your first date.
Brio.
Right. Okay.
We lasted longer than Brio.
Sorry.
It's too bad
for your luck, Brio.
The Falls couldn't support Fridays. You know what I like about Sioux Falls? I don't know how many of your listeners are like here local, but what I've noticed about it is the names of like businesses, specifically restaurants here, are very simple. And I actually like it a lot. Like driving here, there's a place that says Mr. Donuts.
Yeah.
I like that. Nothing fancy. Yeah, I don't know if that's his name. I'm in. Another one is just called Burger Time.
Yeah.
I really like Burger Time. That's so funny to me. Like, every other in town, they put a name on it or whatever. It says Burger Time. And then which other one across the, it just said Sports Center. across from where we had breakfast today.
Oh, yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I like that.
Yeah, Dobby Sports Center.
Yeah, you think of the TV show. I never thought about naming a building the Sports Center.
Yeah.
I want to go there.
And that's been around since the TV show existed, or before, actually. So
Good for them.
So I think probably ESPN probably owes them some money. I mean,
Probably. That's how they're staying in business.
Yeah, exactly.
Their royalties.
Yeah, and the funny thing about like Burger Time is, this is already just fun, and I'm not sure the fruitfulness it comes through fun. But so but Burger Time, if I remember correctly, that was actually a video game that I played on my old. I know I'm significantly older than you. I get it, but like the Atari 2600 is the video console that I grew up with.
Wow.
Okay, so you could probably find one at a Goodwill. I'm sure you've heard about them.
Yeah.
Kind of back with records.
Yeah.
8-track players.
Yeah, the founding fathers, I think, they played with it.
Yeah, but I'm pretty certain there was a game called Burger Time.
Burger Time?
And we had to, and it was a little chef that went back and forth, kind of like on like a Donkey Kong type thing.
Oh, that's good fun.
And you had to go through things, and you had to build burgers. And so like the bun would fall.
Great. You're learning life skills.
Exactly. Well, and it actually did. I never thought about that. It did teach me for my first ever job, which was at Burger King. So
you started at the BK Lounge, huh?
I did for sure.
Wow.
And so I never realized. So when these kids are saying, listen, this video game is teaching me life skills, it really is.
I mean, look at you. Do you get that job at Burger King without Burger Time?
I don't know that I would have.
How long did you last at Burger King?
I got there when I was 14 years old because they would hire 14-year-old.
Wow.
Yep. And it was also close enough to the duplex where I grew up in, so I could ride my bike there, which was a little difficult in January when it was hot, right? But no, I worked there till I was about 16 and a half. And then went from there to Foot Locker.
Upgrade.
Yep. Got to wear the referee uniform.
Yep, you bet.
Now I don't think they do that anymore at the Foot Locker, but that's where I learned how to size people's shoes.
Okay.
And serve people, touch dirty feet, right?
That's too bad.
Yeah. Well, Scripture talks about supposed to wash people's feet. I didn't wash them. I just put new shoes on dirty socks. And then if they didn't choose those shoes, what did we do? We put them back in a box on the shelf. And in the bowling alley even, they spray the shoes out. We didn't do that at the
Foot Locker. It was like, there's a ceiling fan, so it kind of ventilates it all.
So yeah, that's how I got my start. And
that's great.
What was your first job?
My first job, I was a statistician for a minor league baseball team.
What's kind of corporate America? You said that you hadn't worked in corporate America. That's kind of corporate.
Didn't feel corporate. Okay. I was like 17. They let me work there, so I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't graduated high school. It was a great first job, though. I mean, it was just like I grew up very just like math nerd, sports nerds. This is the perfect hybrid. And so, yeah, I would sit in the stands. I would keep like meticulous data of every single thing that happened, like every single pitch, what happened, and every single ball put in play. You would chart where it was touched and the trajectory of the ball. And then I'm sure this job has changed a ton since then, but then you'd write all down on paper, and then I'd have to go home and then redo it on the computer. Like if I had done that job even just like 3 years later, it would have been so much easier. Right. You bring a laptop connected to Wi-Fi, but it's like the technology wasn't quite there. And so I had to do my job twice every night, basically.
Right. So let me ask you, Jake, because you think about how every job you have teaches you lessons, right?
Yeah.
So like, and one thing leads to the next. You realize, okay, well, this is what I learned from that. So when you think about that first job, what was it that maybe you learned during that job that you necessarily didn't realize that you learned, but looking back on as hindsight's 2020, would you say like, if I think about it, like I learned this at that first job?
Well, I mean, for one, this was a 2-man team. So every game you work, you're with another scorekeeper. I think just for, to have, well, what did you think about this?
Not
okay, I thought it was this.
A new person.
Yeah, so that was a big thing. And not only, I have coworkers for the first time, but these are all mainly like retired men, and then, so just like having like just a new, I think it built like new conversation skills. Like I've only ever talked to high schoolers or my parents for the first time, for my whole life. And now me and Bob got to make conversation for 3 hours. So I'm guessing, if I had to look back, I'm sure I developed some conversation skills, like having to talk through that, and just like some like growing up a little bit, like your first job. Now all of a sudden, like I've got to drive myself to the ballpark. I can't be late. I have to go find like the will call building. I have to get my tickets. Oh, they don't have my tickets. I got to problem solve. I got to call the people, because we weren't working for the Springfield Cardinals. We were working for like some third-party company. So we just bought tickets and sat in the stands. But for the most part, I mean, it was a blast. I think if anything, it taught me, it was like, hey, work a job you really enjoy. And that's really important because I don't, back then I didn't really care how much I got paid. I was like, I'm getting to go to baseball games.
Yeah.
You pay me whatever you want. You pay me in hot dogs if you want to. And I think it
Which
did
is
kind
a high
of,
school student, you're like, that might not be that bad.
yeah, actually, yeah. Mom's kind of slacking lately, so I might just throw down the dogs. But I started down a path of like, quote, fun jobs. So that might have been the groundwork of like, hey, you don't have to do what everyone else does. Like, go find something else that you'd rather do.
Yeah. So you mentioned that out of college, you worked for roughly 6 years at a summer camp.
Yes.
Primarily with middle schoolers,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, I mean, that's that ripe age. And by ripe, that also means a little bit of ripe and smelling because at middle schools, right? Because that's when they look at showering as optional.
Yeah.
I was in youth ministry for a long, long time. So I worked with teenagers a ton. So when you think about just being on staff at a Christian summer camp, and again, like that was something I counseled. I was a rec director at camps. I directed camps. So I did every aspect of camps, as well. So you think about some of the things that you learned even from being employed with a summer camp. What are some of the experiences that you had during those 6 years that like prepared you in different areas?
I mean, the first thing I can think of is like, after 2 years of working there, I was then kind of promoted. I was asked to be a different position. Instead of being a counselor of this cabin of like 12 boys, it was like, hey, we want you to be up in front of people on the microphone, doing the games, doing the skits, doing the parties. And I think people met me now, they're like, oh my gosh, of course. Yeah, that's what you should do. But back then, I mean, I had never touched a microphone before. I was just your typical high school jock. I played football, basketball, baseball.
Yeah.
That's all I cared about. I played 3 video games. It was a football game, a basketball game, and a baseball game. That's all I wanted. I was just a typical boy.
Yeah.
And then, like 20 years old, they saw something in me. They're like, we want you to like plan these parties. And I was like, wow. And it really unlocked a skill set that I didn't know I had. I mean, shout out Ward Wiebe, the K West director, if he hadn't asked me to do that, I mean, I might be working in data entry, for Ernst & Young right now, which is fine. But it's like, without the right invitation, without the right, person stepping in, I mean, it can drastically change the scope of the rest of your life. And so then, you find out like, hey, I'm not terrified to speak in front of people.
Yeah. I
still have my wits about me. People are laughing, people are enjoying this. And then that kind of starts a snowball effect. And I look back and I'm like, man, that so easily could not have happened.
Yeah.
Because I really think they were scraping the bottom of the barrel when they asked me. Because I really don't think they knew me that well. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they asked like 6 or 7 people and they couldn't do it. And they got to me and they're like, oh, Jake will say yes. He asked to be paid in hot dogs last year. So he'll say yes. So that's a big takeaway. It's like, man, how different would my life have looked? And absolutely loved it. So the second thing, so me and my wife, we don't have kids yet. But, as you get older, I'm around way more kids now. And so you're starting to like, not that I have any clue what it's like to be a parent, but all my best friends have kids and I watch their kids and I spend time with their kids. I say all that to say it's insane that they let us like be in charge of kids. Do you ever feel like that when you think back to being a youth pastor? Yeah. You're like, I mean, I was really in charge of them for 2 weeks at a time.
I took them on mission trips to Mexico. I took them to other countries.
I took them to Haiti.
And their parents.
What are they doing? Letting me do this?
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy. So maybe the lesson there is just like, really value other people's kids because I don't know if I did it. Nothing bad happened, but I mean, I think I was just like, we're buddies, we're cool. And it's insane when I think back to that. Like, I didn't know anything. Yeah. But I mean.
So what made you want to go and have that position? Like what drew you to youth ministry and being involved in the youth camping ministry?
So I think the summer camp specifically, my mom had worked for that camp back in college and she had good experiences. I'd completely forgotten about it, but then they came to my school and they were doing interviews. And so that's when it kind of went, I was like, oh, kind of a light bulb moment. Like, yeah, I should apply for that. That sounds fun. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, my personality is the exact personality of a camp counselor. Like, it's so obvious I should have done that. And I'm glad I did. But at the time it was like, yeah, I might get around to applying. You're 19, a college freshman. So I think thankfully my mom enjoyed it and kind of encouraged me to do it. And then as far as when I went on to full-time, year-round ministry, that was just a friend pestering me to do it because I was about to graduate college, and I had a few different opportunities on the table. I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. but none of them were youth ministry. But this guy, a friend of mine, was just like, hey, there's this position opening up in Kansas City. I'd love for you to think about it. Will you please think about it? You pray about it. I'm like, yeah. Please pray. Hey, they're doing interviews. You could apply. I'm like, yeah, maybe. He wouldn't stop bothering me about it. And so I was like, fine, I'll like do an interview, at least how I remember it. It was really just to like get him to like stop. I was like, I'm in Kansas City already this weekend. I'll sit down and do an interview. And that's a big moment where I'm like, God like changed my heart, because I truly was not interested. I was like, I don't know, it doesn't sound that fun. I have these like really cool opportunities and these things people are asking me to do, and things that paid more than $19,000 a year, right. Plus free housing. But it's truly just like my heart changed, and all of a sudden I interviewed with the whole board of directors, and the other guy I was going to be working with, and the other girl I was going to be working with, and I was like, it's all I want to do now. Yeah. I hope they like me in the interview, because now I'm all in.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's really crazy.
Dude, I love that story. And one of the reasons that I love it so much is because I feel like there's sometimes in some moments in our life that you don't really realize until you look back on and reflect, which
100%.
Which I don't think that we do often enough in our life.
Yeah.
Where we just sit and kind of reflect back, because we're so forward focusing.
Are you a more forward focused person?
100%. Like if you look at the Strengths Finder.
That's what I was going to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Strengths Finder.
Futuristic? You
futuristic?
Hey, yeah.
Yes. Futuristic, woo.
Yep.
Communication.
Probably in there too.
Okay.
I know woo and futuristic are in my top 5 though.
So, well, I mean, anytime, like you and I have had multiple conversations, spent some time together. Obviously the very first time we were like face to face, you and I walked around the mall together, which is hilarious. That's a great story. But like, I mean, there are a lot of similarities between you and I, but this whole idea of this always looking forward and like building something, and this is where we're going, and all this, and which is a great thing. It's a great thing, but often and I'll put you in this camp, is that we struggle looking back and celebrating where we've come from, or
100%.
And thinking about just even the steps that it took to get us to where we are, and how God brought different people at different times. But okay, that was a lot to say to get to this point, is that sometimes people see stuff in us that we don't see in ourselves. And
shout out to those people.
Correct. And that's like, those people are saying, listen, we want you to apply, want you to interview, want you to do this. Like, you didn't necessarily see that in your future at that moment or that time, and you go do it, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, that was super important.
Yeah, that was the exact right thing I needed.
Right.
It makes me want to like pester more people. I shouldn't feel bad about double texting. Who knows what it could lead to?
Yeah, exactly. Double texting.
But I totally feel that though, because I'm always, and I think it's a part of the nature of content creation. It's like, you don't dwell on, it's like, well, I got to make another video next week. We're on a next podcast next week. And thankfully my wife is very reflective. I give her a hard time about it, but she's just like, I mean, she's already, like I said, we don't have kids yet. Every now and then she'll bring up how sad she is when our kids go off to kindergarten. She's like, this is not going to be the worst day. And I'm like, I don't know. And we'll see. And she's just so like already like, she'll look forward to summer all year long. And then once the first day of summer is here, she's like, I don't have anything to look forward to. I'm like, but summer's here. It's we have it.
Yeah.
We have it now. But anyway, she's also very reflective as well, and always looking back, and knows how she felt and knows what happened. And so it's good to have that balance.
So you grew up in a small town.
Yep.
Just a small town boy.
That's me.
Okay. And stoplight?
One at the time, and I got a couple now. They're getting a little too big. I don't like it.
And so small school.
Yeah.
Small church.
Yep.
Okay.
Loved it.
Okay. And so you grew up in a family that had faith as a foundation.
Yes.
So like, when did you decide, I was love to ask, especially for kids that have grown up in the church, there's always this point where it's like, okay, I'm actually going to have this be an important piece of my life. And it's not just going to be because, I go to church with my parents or whatever, because at the end of the day, we all leave home, we move on, and we establish, is church going to be an important part of my life? Is faith going to be an important part of my life? Walk with the Lord, whatever. So like, do you remember like a point where you're saying like, no, I think faith is actually my thing?
Yeah, it's a cool question. I think it was came with, it was the college age. So it was like, not only was I going to a Christian college, we were surrounded by good people. Then I got off to that summer camp, Kanakuk, and then you're surrounded by really good people. And from the top down, you have leadership, setting a great example. And that was the first time it really wanted to be surrounded by like good dudes, because like high school, yes, I had good friends, but I was the only Christian on the basketball team,
Sure.
And so I was like, I think I'm setting a good example, but I'm not being uplifted by the people around me.
Yeah.
And then, you get to Kanakuk and everyone else is like reading their Bible, start their day. You're like, wow, this is really cool. And everyone else is like serving people. And so I think it just showed me a lot of good habits to pick up. And that's when it like clicked. It was like, it's one thing to like not party. I'm doing the right thing, but it's another thing to actually live it out and be filled up with the word and stuff like that. So.
Okay. So, and I think that that's such an important word because like the college years really do seem to be formative, whether you go on to school or like when you get into that first job outside of high school, and you start being like, okay, I'm now quote unquote an adult and I need to kind of figure this out. And what you just spoke to, Jake, is such a, I think it's just an important truth is that, the people that we surround ourselves with, it is important. I mean, that's an important decision.
So important
because you've probably heard the statement, you kind of become the average of the top 5 people you hang out with and just the environment that you're a part of, that really is very influential and you can do as much as you can to influence and bring other people up. But it is also important that we surround ourselves with like-minded people that are helping us, grow in whatever thing. I mean, whether that obviously is faith, like in business, we're going to get into kind of the business side of things in a few moments, but like who we surround ourselves with is important.
I even noticed that. I mean, even just like sense of humor. I mean, the people you're with, we're all so spongy and it's like you're around people who joke around this way. You end up finding yourself joking around this way.
Yeah.
You're around people who quote The Office. You end up kind of quoting The Office. And there's another great quote, I'm sure you've heard it, but like, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you're becoming.
Yeah.
Like, I think
show
that's
me
so
your friends,
true.
I'll show you your future.
Yeah. It's very important. So college it can be very make or break. And for me, I was surrounded by good people. So it helped a lot.
So we talked about how, there's people that have seen something in us prior to us seeing ourselves. You had that experience in getting into the, obviously the job, into the counseling. And then all of a sudden now you are building relationship with a dude named Trey Kennedy.
Yeah.
Because, and this is kind of your story, even in how you got into comedy, you didn't necessarily say, hey, I'm going to get into doing stand-up comedy. That was not necessarily your mindset at all.
Not one bit.
But you were working with Trey and some other things. I'd love to hear you tell that story. But it was Trey that actually said, hey, I got an idea for you.
Yeah, I know. People keep just bringing me up to their level. I'm like, thank you. Thank you. I don't think I'm that determined of a person.
No, they see your potential.
Everyone else is like, dude, what are you doing down there? Come on up here. So, the origin Trey story is actually pretty cool. So we didn't know each other at all.
And for those that maybe don't know who Trey Kennedy is, he's another comedian.
Yeah, content creator, influencer, whatever you want to call it. Been doing it for a long time. Blew up on Vine back in the day. So he had a massive following on Vine, and then transferred all that to Facebook, Instagram. And so I've been following for a while, and I'd seen that everything was, well, let me backtrack. So basically, I moved from Kansas City after my youth ministry job to Dallas. We don't even need to get into why I moved to Dallas or what I was doing there. But basically, I'm in Dallas. Around the same time, Trey moves to Kansas City. And I'm starting to pick up, like, I think he's kind of met some of my friends, whatever. One day, I get I'm in a big group text, and it says, hey, we're doing a bachelor watch party Monday night. Who's going? First of all, I'm like, why would I go to this? Second of all, I've been living in Dallas for 2 months, so some friends you don't even know that I don't live here anymore. But one thing that came out of that is someone texted like, Trey, are you coming? And so I was like, oh, I wonder if Trey Kennedy's in this group text. So I go look up Trey Kennedy on Google. I see he's from Oklahoma City. Okay, he's got a 405 area code. Go back to the group text. There's 3 numbers in the chat that had 405 area codes. And so I was like, this is my shot. Let's do it. Because at that point in time, I'd been following him and he'd been shooting everything. He's going viral. He's successful, but everything is being shot on a tripod. I could tell. And at that point, I'm starting to pick up some skills. I'm kind of a videographer. And so I was like, what's the worst he could say? I'll shoot my shot. And so I call the first number, 405, whatever. Call it. Trey answers the phone. I was like, hey, this is Trey. I'm like, oh, what's happening? So I was like, hey, my name is Jake Triplett. I kind of laid out, here's who I am. Here's what I do. It took a few more phone calls and more convincing, but eventually he was like, you know what, let's do it. And so I moved back to Kansas City, really, I mean, for a very part-time job, but it's because I wanted my foot in the door with Trey. I was like, who knows? I mean, sky's the limit with this guy, who knows what it could turn into. And so I worked like 5 hours a week for him. That was it at first, still doing freelance video for other people. And then about a year later, he wanted to bring me on full-time, like as a writer, appearing in the videos. And around that same time is when he was like, I'm also thinking about going on the road. Would you want to open up for me? So yeah, in about a year's time, all of a sudden I went from freelancer to like, I think I'm kind of a comedian now,
Right.
with no experience.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. So I'm still very new into comedy.
Yeah. Well, two things there. One, that is the second time that I've heard you in this short conversation talk about your amazing sleuth skills, because you talked about how you were able to figure out your future wife's last name by going to the website,
Internet's great.
to the volleyball, and then you're doing 405 area code searches and all this, and so your sleuth skills are amazing. And then I thought it's so funny because like you call him and he answers the phone and says, "Hey, this is Trey," and you're like, "Oh man, that's exactly how I felt when I called you." When I got your number and I called and you're like, "Yeah, it's Jake," and I'm like, okay, now I got to put words together and say, "You want to go to Sioux Falls?" And then it's like, "Wait, you're actually going to Sioux Falls?"
Let's go see Burger Time.
And we ended up meeting, and then we got you to Sioux Falls to come be a part of Date Night Comedy.
I know. I love it here.
So it's a lot of fun. And so yeah, but you say that obviously, yes, you're still new into the whole stand-up comedy scene, but then you've also got these other ventures, these other things that are taking your time, that really are going quite well.
Yeah.
Probably got to figure out at some point, like, how much time are you going to invest in these different areas and make, we all have to come to that point where we're saying like, okay, so what am I going to say yes to?
Exactly.
And what am I going to say no to? Because when I'm saying no to this, I'm able to say yes to this. And we all have decisions like that. Even just how we use our time, right?
Yeah.
Not just corporate or like in job ways, but also in just relationships. Like, man, if I say yes to too many of these things, then that means I'm going to say no to my wife, and that's not good, but so just figuring that whole thing out. So, so you've got a pickleball company.
Yeah.
You started that when?
Also about a year and a half ago or so.
Right. So you decided, let's get married and start a new company and be new at comedy. Let's just do all the new stuff, all the things right away.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. It's weird, the timing of it. I mean, the same month I met Rachel was the same month I started my first ever comedy tour. And so all she's ever known is like me being gone all the time.
Yeah.
So I kind of needed to change that. So yeah, about a year ago this time, I was doing, so Ghost Runners is a podcast I do with my friend Brad. Correct Opinions is the name of the podcast I do with Trey. Brad and I have like a sketch comedy page called Jean Shorts. Trey and I have a golf comedy page called Mood Swings Golf. And then Friday Pickleball gets going. And then on top of all of those 5 things, then I'm also like a touring comedian at the time. And I'm trying to juggle all that. And I'm recently married. And I knew it was like, all right, I've got these 7 things in the air right now.
Yeah.
For the short term, yes, I can keep this alive. But even back then I knew, I was like, there's no way all this can it's not sustainable. And so, yeah, my entire stand-up career, it's been like 6th on the totem pole, because it's like, it was fun and it's fulfilling, but it's not, I'm the opener. It's not like making me a ton of money. It's fun and it's cool. But, and so more recently I've had to decide like, all right, some things have got to go. And so honestly, a lot of them are kind of going away. So as Friday Pickleball has gotten more and more successful, other things have been dropped. One of them being traveling with Trey. So it's like, this is so fun. I mean, 5 years ago, if you would have told me you have a chance to be a touring comedian, like, I will do anything. Yeah. I mean, what a dream come true. And then like anything, I mean, it just like, 1, it becomes a job, and 2, it's just like, I'm very blessed to have a lot of good opportunities. And just because it's a good opportunity for someone doesn't mean I have to do it. Yeah. And so it was a tough decision. But yeah, probably 3 or 4 months ago, I told Trey, like, hey, I think this next tour, I'm just going to sit this one out. Like, I want to be home more. I'm trying to do less.
Well, especially if you want to have kids, you got to be home at some point in order to make kids.
I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure that's the way that works.
I'm Googling it. And yeah, I think you have it. Yeah.
I'm no genius.
Yeah.
But so it is good to be in the same city as your wife and,
you need that.
And be home at times. So, okay. So you make that tough decision saying, hey, Trey, yep, I'm just going to say no to that so I can say yes to this.
Yeah.
But tell me just about, like, first of all, why do you call it Friday Pickleball? Like, where did the name Friday come from?
So you probably heard these other names. I've named randomly a lot of these things. Like Brad and I's podcast is called Ghost Runners, which is a stupid name. But We never knew it was going to be a business or a brand or anything.
Yeah.
I was like, Brad, do you want to start a podcast? It's about a 10-second conversation. He's like, yeah. I'm like, what do you want to call it? And he was like, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be in a band called Ghost Runner on Second. Like, you ever play wiffle ball? And like, you don't have enough people. And so you're like, all right, we have a Ghost Runner on Second, one out. And so we didn't think any longer about it. I was like, well, let's just shorten it to Ghost Runners. Cool. All right, we got a podcast. And now for the last 4 years, I mean, every time someone's like, dude, I want to check out our podcast. What's it called? Ghost Runners? What's up? Ghost Runners? Oh, it's about like, is it like a ghost story thing? No, it's not about, it's not about ghosts. Is it like spiritual warfare? No, it's just, it's comedy. And it's just the worst. And so I feel like between that and then our sketch comedy page called Gene Shorts, I named that too. And there's a language barrier there. Gene? Now, which one of you is Gene? No, it's like Gene Shorts. Okay, how do you spell that? Figure it out. Look it up. I don't know. I'm tired of it.
Were you ever tempted to shorten that to jorts?
Maybe we should have. Yeah. And then other people are like, dude, that's so smart because YouTube Shorts. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And so basically I was like, all right, if I'm going to start a new brand and it's going to be pickleball, I'm going to take what I've learned and like, it needs to be easy to communicate. There's no follow-up questions. And I want it to be something that people already have like almost a positive connotation of. So I was like, who doesn't love Fridays? They already know how to spell it. It's nice and punchy. Friday pickleball. And so that was the thought.
Okay. Now you told me a funny story this morning at breakfast about a conversation that you had as you were getting ready. You were jumping on a plane to come here to Zoo Laws. It's early. I mean, you caught an early flight, which I'm appreciative. You said, listen, I want to make sure I'm on time, which by the way, thank you. I can tell that you are also a guy that's just on time, aren't you?
Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, it's
because you, like
my wife doesn't own a watch. I think she got the only cell phone in the world without a clock on it. And so for me to balance her out, I have to be so on time these days.
Again, you and I are structured very similar. I'm like, if you're 10 minutes early, you're on time.
Yeah.
Like I'd like to be everywhere on time or whatever. And then Laura's like, she'll look at it and be like, I think that's suggested. I think that we should.
They don't really want you there right at 9.
Like punching in at 12:30. I'm not sure that's really that important, but at any rate, no, honey, I love you. Just kidding. So, but it's an early flight, and is it the TSA agent? Is it
the first woman I saw when I walk in? So Friday Pickleball, we make a lot of content, but we're a paddle company. Yeah. Recently, we've made like some apparel and some merch just for us to wear.
Right.
Just
and for me, I'm looking forward to having
it for people who have us on their podcast.
Yes, right.
It's just kind of fun, and so, yeah, we'll have some shirts, and then, we just got these rope hats in. So, yeah, it'll be fun to wear it. And, yeah, I think I woke up at 4:45, so I probably made it to the airport at 5:30 a.m. I had a long night the night before. And so, I mean, I'm just dragging through there, and this, like, sassy TSA agent is just like, you're not coming through here. I'm like, what is that about? And she's like, you got the wrong day on your hat. And I'm like, for the love of God, let me through this line. She's like, no, you got the wrong day, mister. Pull out that Thursday hat. You got to search that bag for a I'm like, I will pay you $20 cash. Just let me go. Just let me go. It's just one of those things. When it's early in the morning, everything just is heightened, and you're like, this is the worst. And now it's funny. But yeah, I was like, I might burn this thing.
I love, well, number one, your impression of, this gal. I think it's awesome. But number two, just this the joy that she had already in that morning. And
that's what I thought. She's probably 6 hours into her shift. Right. I don't blame her.
Yeah. And here's the deal. Like, when you can meet a joyful TSA agent as well,
I should have been more thankful.
Yeah. Like, that's like a diamond in the rough, because like so many times, like I'll be like, I'm probably an overthinker. Like, I love just going to people and just saying, hey, listen, thanks for your work today.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Like, just that's because everybody needs to appreciate it and encourage for what they do. It's a value and all that. And so I love to do that. But it's just, I feel like sometimes when I'm flying somewhere, in which I'm doing a lot more now, I just want to double down on it, because I just feel like, especially them, they just don't get appreciated very often.
Well, no, they're too busy screaming at you. No time.
Checking the mag and all this stuff. And so, but I don't know that I've ever found one that is that full of joy. Like, I know. So that
it's special.
I think you need to find her when you fly back home and be like, hey, the one gal, where is she? I just
give me a hug.
Yeah.
Well, what I needed was a little warming up to it. Yeah. I needed like a couple TSA agents to scream at me, wake me up a little bit, and then I get the nice one. Yeah. It just came in too hot, too early.
Coming too hot. It's coming too hot. All right. So you still, even though you're kind of making some decisions, you're figuring out where do you need to allocate your time, it's still life as an entrepreneur, and I have a very entrepreneurial mindset. I'm always thinking about, again, like we already talked about, the future, and I could add this, we could do this, and and say yes to this, and boy, think about the amount of impact we have here, whatever.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out, like, okay, how do you utilize your gifts and the wiring, the strengths that we've been wired with by God. So like, but yet also figuring out, like, okay, but how do you also do that in a healthy way?
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's truly is a good definition of work-life balance, and I don't know if, is it more like just being centered? Is there such thing as balance? I know that this is like something that you've kind of wrestled with as well. So have you landed anywhere on that? Have you figured that out, Jake? Because like, I'd like to know what's working for you as you try to quote unquote find a work-life balance.
I mean, I'm 33 years old. I've barely been married. I don't know a darn thing, but I know that, like, it seems like, so my wife is a like licensed professional counselor. Like, we kind of joke, we did premarital counseling, and premarital counselor, kind of TSA vibes, but they were just, it's almost like they preach us the opposite of how we are. They're like, so just so you know, girls, they're just going to talk, guys, you better be ready to listen. And I'm like, that's so funny, because like Rachel gets paid to listen and I get paid to talk.
Yeah.
Like, we are the exact opposite. But I think because of our skill sets, we do communicate really well. We both come from households where we've never seen our parents fight. And we also just share those skills. I think it's just more genetic than anything, just very kind spoken. We're not agitated people, very easygoing. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is finding a partner that you like work well with.
Yeah.
And so that we try to communicate expectations as best we can. And also being easygoing covers a lot of bases, just like, I thought you were gonna be home tonight. Oh, I thought I told you I had this tonight. Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
So just 2 weeks ago, I had it was probably a little longer than that, but like early February, I'm doing a comedy gig at a pickleball facility, and they changed up the dates last minute, and they were like, hey, we actually want it to be next Friday, which is Valentine's Day. Yeah, that still work? And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So then I go text Rachel. I'm like, hey, they want it to be on Valentine's Day now. And I'm like, I think she'll be cool with this. And I was like, so yeah, is that okay if it's Valentine's Day? She's like, oh, whew, yeah, I already made plans anyway. So I was like, oh, great. It's awesome.
She made plans on Valentine's Day.
She had already made separate plans. So I was like, oh, this works out great. So we just spent Valentine's separately. Yeah, I went and did a gig for 60 people, and she bought a rug that day. So we broke even on the day. So I don't know what I have to share about, doing it all with a wife. I mean, just have a great, easygoing life has helped me a lot.
But also even just recognizing the importance of communication. One of the difficulties of communication, I think is that oftentimes we think it's happened and it hasn't.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's figuring out, okay, how am I going to not just communicate, but almost over communicate to where I think, like, man, I think we've talked about this multiple times. There is a helpful, level that of just understanding that can come from that. And in figuring out, okay, especially if there's someone else in the picture, like, you still need to figure out that work-life balance if you're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
If you don't, that conversation will I'm just telling you right now, it will change, especially when kids enter the picture, because it'll need to, because there's now another human being that you have to care for and be mindful of.
But I've heard 0 to 1 is a pretty big jump. Yeah. It's pretty life changing.
Yeah, exactly. And 1 to 2 is even more so. But all of them, it's just what it is. But figuring that out and having this, hey, what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
And then figuring, and sometimes it's, if you don't have another person to visit that with, going to a trusted individual, at least this is where I've kind of found some help personally for myself, is going to people that know me and saying, hey, what do you think, like, I should add or take?
Yeah.
Or like, what are you seeing that maybe isn't going to be healthy long term?
Yeah.
You recognized because of just some self-awareness, like, okay, I can do all this for a season, but like, this is not sustainable. I mean, that's the word I used.
Yeah, especially kids time. I mean, I don't want to be gone this much, and you got to figure something out.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, you want to be there to teach them how to play pickleball.
They have to know that, and the two-handed backhand. That's important.
It's very good because I know that some people thought that when pickleball, started to, which by the way, I learned how to play pickleball when I was a youth pastor in Portland, Oregon.
Good for you.
Because we had a gym in our church, and I played pickleball with all the older people.
Yeah, they love it.
They taught me how to play pickleball in the gym. It was like Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. and they would come in, and so I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so I played religiously. That makes sense to say that since I was in a church.
Yeah, youth pastor.
So I played it with great regularity. But then what was funny was, so then we moved back to Sioux Falls in 2005 because I was in 99 to 2005, and I didn't even think about it because we didn't have it. It wasn't an option. It wasn't a thing.
It's crazy you were playing pickleball in early 2000s.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. I should have a pickleball company.
You should have started one.
Yeah, exactly. Man, think of it. Darn it. I could have called it Thursday.
Yeah.
I showed up in the airport.
She would have loved it.
She would have loved it.
She would have loved it.
But I didn't think about it. But then all of a sudden I hear all my friends going, hey, we're going to go play pickleball. And I'm like, I forgot about pickleball.
That's that Oregon sport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't believe me that I played before.
I mean, that's pretty unheard of what you just told me. I mean, no one played it before COVID.
Well, all the older people at Oregon City Church of the Nazarene did.
Oh, yeah, they did.
I learned how to play
That's
with
awesome.
them, and then they'd have coffee afterwards.
That's great.
And I love that time because normally, you know this in working with youth ministry, a lot of times you just hang out with all the teenagers.
Yeah.
And so,
you're desperate for some adult time.
Correct.
Oh, so nice.
It's like when you graduate from the kids table at Christmas time.
Uh-huh.
You're like,
Yeah.
hey, you can now sit with the adult table.
Real plates.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
We made it.
You're not at a real table. You're not at a car table anymore, right?
Yep.
And so I felt like, man, I've graduated and I get to have these conversations with these older people who play pickleball and they understand me, and
Great.
I'm just soaking in all their wisdom. And then they're telling me they had to teach me the rules,
Yep.
and I'm like, no, I played tennis. And then they're like,
I'll be just fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I had to learn some rules. But
Isn't that great? Pickleball is so accessible, though. I love that you can get on a court and it doesn't matter what they look like, how old they are, how young they are. It's like, I bet we'll have a good game still.
yeah, and I'll tell you this, I've been on a court with these older people that are far superior. I mean, they dominate. You watch 4 people that have been playing pickleball for I don't know how many years. I mean, I don't know if they play every day or how they got so good in a short period of time since the popularity. But I mean, you watch, they're all up at the net.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're lightning quick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are you that fast? I mean, you didn't drive that fast to get here. But you are just
your
dominating.
diet is applesauce and prune juice. How are you moving this quickly?
Well, they're light on their feet.
How are you fueling your body?
The most embarrassing time I've had on a pickleball court, though, is, I mean, I've had many, but this was probably a couple years ago, and I went and played at some new courts in Sioux Falls, which is right next to the orthopedics surgery place. Which
bingo!
It's a wheelbarrow. You ride in there with your Achilles tear. But I went up for a shot or like an overhead slam or whatever, and and I landed. And my calf just seized like a mother, man. It was just so hard.
More applesauce.
Bro, I should drink more prune juice this morning. But I literally couldn't stand on my foot.
Gosh.
And I went and I had to go and sit along the baseline, along the fence. They brought in somebody else. Well, Tom's down, bring in another guy.
You're like, don't make a scene. This is so embarrassing.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to stretch it out. I'm like, I've got the old running stretch that I used back when I ran track in high school. I'm doing all the stretches, trying to stretch everything out. And I have these older people just come up to me and they're like, are you okay? Are you doing okay? Is there anything that we can do?
Taking off her elbow brace. Are you okay? Everything all right?
Yeah.
Taking off her back brace.
I'm like, man, I'm now that guy. I'm the guy that now gets injured playing pickleball. And it took me, bro, I'm not kidding you. It took me like 6 months till I felt like, and I had to go get some massages on my legs because I don't know what it did.
Yeah, you got to make up another reason too. You go in like, hey, what's the matter? Oh, it's just heavy machinery, construction, guy stuff. You know me,
bro. I've had so many layers of pride stripped off me. I just like, listen, it's pickleball.
Yeah,
I'm 46 at the time or whatever it was. I don't remember. I'm 46 and I got this injured playing pickleball.
Yeah,
I mean,
it hasn't happened to me yet, but I mean, it's a matter of time.
No,
it will crush me.
I hope time.
At some point.
We've got many years to go. All right. Well, dude, we're about out of time. We got to wrap this thing up. But I do want to talk about just one more thing really quick. You got a few more minutes?
I got time.
Okay, here's the deal. So I want to talk because business and relationships and friendships and all those kinds of things sometimes can be a little bit hairy, can sometimes be difficult, right? Just because, but you've gone into business. You've already mentioned the things that you're doing with the podcasts and then obviously just other ventures that you're in of doing that with friends.
Yeah.
And what you've been able to do successfully thus far, and I have no doubt it will continue, is just, maintaining that strong depth of friendship.
Yeah.
While in business together.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've heard different stories where that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
And so are there conversations you had at the front end, other conversations that you have just ongoing, just to make sure that the friendship stays intact as you're moving forward in business?
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone would tell you not to do that, but everyone says don't get into business with your friends. And I think that is true. If your primary goal is to make money, you probably shouldn't get into business with your friends. But if your primary goal is to make money while also making memories and maybe serving a need or fulfillment in yourself, then it's so fun to be in business with your friends, with the right friends. So not to say that it's always been perfect, but I think if you're a self-aware person, if you're an empathetic person, you could avoid a lot of the problems that people run into. And I'm very much still in it. So it's not like I've been able to take a step back and I have all these theories and, things to say about it. But just in my short time doing it, for instance, I'll just get candid. Brad and I on our Ghost Artist podcast, we used to split everything 50-50. Well, as I get busier and busier and I'm gone all the time and I'm juggling these 7 things, I start to realize for this podcast to keep succeeding and keep bringing in revenue, Brad's going to have to take on more work. And so he should absolutely be compensated for that. So I brought up, I was like, hey, we should change our split. If you're willing to take on this more work, you should get more money for it. Of course, Brad's like, yeah, I'm down. So I think if you're recognizing and you don't let your pride get in the way, and yes, it stinks to not make as much money, but will the podcast continue to be successful that way? Yes, 100%. And I think I just enjoy doing it that way. I mean, just when I started Friday Pickleball, maybe I could have done it by myself, but I just think everything's more fun with at least one other person. I give everyone that advice. Yes, you make more money if you're doing some venture by yourself, but having another head in the huddle, having someone you can be a little more accountable to, it always helps having other people. So I grabbed 2 buddies who'd never done any type of content creation, anything, but they liked pickleball. And I was like, you guys want to come along for the ride? And so they've been great. And that's really fun too, to see them acquire more skills and get into it.
That's so good, brother. And what I love about that is, and Brad was probably fine. I was probably didn't really think much of it, but you had the awareness and empathy of saying, hey, I'm going to bring up this conversation. And what that really says to me, and this is what I was thinking about just as I've been in relationship with a lot of people, in different capacities and working with friends or whatever, is just establishing listen, or even boards that I'm on or board members that are on my ministry board saying, listen, we always want to put relationship first.
Yeah.
And we never want to lose relationship. Period. We never want to lose relationship. And so how do we always just, as we move forward, that is at the forefront of our mind?
Yeah.
Because that at the end of the day, as well as I do, it's people that matter, and relationships are what's the most important part of our lives.
Especially when the business is podcasting. I mean, our biggest commodity is our friendship. That's why people listen. So if anything were to get in the way of that, we don't have a product anymore. Yeah. So you have to care for that. And on top of it, I mean, outside of the podcast, I want our friendship to be really solid as well. Yeah. So you have to get ahead of it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, brother, this has been it's been a lot of fun. I'm really appreciative of the time that we've been able to obviously spend here, just in our city, but then here at this table.
Yeah.
And so thanks for that. Tell people just where they can find you, Friday Pickleball, jean shorts. Ghost Runners. I mean, I listen, I can't keep track of them all. I don't know how you do. I mean, I have 2 boys and I get their names mixed up sometimes. So like you're keeping all your business, your kids' businesses all in line, which is amazing. But so anyway, so tell them where they can find you.
Well, every other Thursday, you listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
But if you want something on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's called Ghost Runners with me and my friend Brad. And that's just a lighthearted comedy podcast. And then if you play pickleball, go to FridayPickle.com. I brought you some paddles. They're still in my hotel room.
Yes.
But I got some for you.
Yes. That's amazing.
Dad, I'm sorry. I got Jack Squad for you. Yeah. Didn't know you were going to be here. But for everyone else out there, they're you can check out our paddles. Friday Pickle. FridayPickle.com, or just, you search Friday Pickleball. You see all of our videos and whatnot.
Yeah, and you do have a lot of creative content and videos out there. And your wife joins you on she's great. She's just awesome. I mean, just like anytime I need her or like want her to be in a video, she's always like, yeah, if you need me to. And then she just goes in and delivers this Meryl Streep performance. Everyone's like, more Rachel. Yeah, exactly. I got to keep her, she's got to be this special treatment. But yeah, she's awesome. Well, and that's been a part of your relationship even, because even when you did the Sheltered Kid, I mean, that's what those were called, right? Mm-hmm. The Sheltered Kid videos. Yeah. She was even in those, like in the Newly Married.
Yes.
She did a lot of those, like when you went to Vegas,
Yeah, she was the one to hold the camera.
So she knew what she was getting into.
Yes.
When you saw her do a 2-handed backhand, and you said, let's go to Bebo's. Bebo's? What was the restaurant?
Brio. Yeah.
Yeah. So she knew from the beginning this was going to be a joint effort, which is amazing.
So yeah, she's great. She's all in. She's always down for whatever.
I love it. All right, dude. Well, hey, so I did not warn you about this, but you're good at thinking on your feet. And so we end every episode with something we just call the final word.
Oh,
so it's just like 30 to 60 seconds of just, hey, it could be something that was meaningful that we talked about already, that you say, hey, here's just kind of final word that I want to leave with the audience today.
Wow.
And it can be something that is really really intense. It could be something more lightheaded, but what do you got as a final word for us today?
All right. The first thing I thought of, lately I've been really impacted. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my grandma passed away. Lived in Kansas City her whole life. Actually, before I get into the final word, this is just kind of funny. But big Chiefs fan, very devout Christian, very close to God. Passed away the night before the Super Bowl. So I was kind of joking with friends. I think God was like, you don't need to watch it. Just come on home. Trust me, you don't.
It's better here.
Yeah, I was like, I'm kind of jealous. Once the Super Bowl came out, I was like, man, I wish I didn't have to see this. Anyway, but she was... we obviously, the whole time she was alive, we knew she was an amazing Christian woman. She was so sweet and awesome. And then once she passed away, my grandpa had already passed away too. So now it's like we have all their belongings and we're starting to go through them all. And now we're starting to really see just how amazing she was. Like I've had other people in my life pass away that I was even maybe closer to than my grandma or other grandparents, but I've never been this impacted by someone passing away before because of what she left behind. I mean, like I said, she passed away 3 weeks ago and I'm still like inspired by it. Like the amount of just like journals she had of like her life. So fascinating to read. The amount of prayer journals she had. I mean, dozens of pages of books filled with just prayers.
Yeah.
On the left side is what she's praying for. Later, she would come back and say when that prayer was answered. I mean, it's just so cool. I'm seeing like parents of my friends in these books. And so ever since then, I've started a journal every single day. I'm praying for people more. And so it just really left an impact on me of like, that's how we're supposed to live. Just praying for people constantly.
Yeah.
And just like, she always wanted to write a book and it was called Let Me Tell You About My Jesus. And that's just what she was put on this earth to do. She had her priorities straight. And it's a good realignment for me too, as I'm in entertainment and content and entrepreneurship. It's very easy to get distracted when it's like, man, my grandma, she had it. She was dialed in. Yeah. So I journal every night now. It's really cool.
Bro, that's so good. Well, thank you. That is an excellent final word. And what a great way to honor even your grandmother right now and sharing that here. So thank you for sharing that. And again, thank you for your friendship. Thanks for being here these couple days of doing date night comedy with me and being here on this podcast. And I'm just excited to see how God continues to just grow all these fun things that you're in. And I can't wait for my new pickleball pads.
Yeah. Blue or purple. I got you options. And thanks for having me to Sioux Falls. Thanks for not being based in Fargo.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Giving Life Podcast, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jake today. If you want to hear more from him, you can follow him on all his social media platforms. And of course, don't forget to check out his podcast, Ghost Runners, and his pickleball company at FridayPickleball.com. All right, that's all for today, friends. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the RESGEN Giving Life Podcast. Until then, continue being men whose life in Christ gives life to others. See you soon.